Coming onto the stage is Edvard Lend, Head of Media Relations for Skanska, AB Group Communications. Many of you will know the Skanska name from big project sites, construction sites, building sites around the world. Edward is going to share his experience about going local in a global context. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I'm very happy to be here, actually, because I find the numbers very, very important in my role as the head of media relations. I will not show much numbers, though. I will rather argue for why and what questions they need to answer and the relation between local and global. So, first off, I was asked to present myself. I work for some of the most media-exposed companies in Sweden. One is the National Railway Company. The Swedes in the room knows what that means. For others, I will illustrate it with an anecdote from that time. 8 years ago, we had a very severe storm in Sweden. It left about 300,000 people without electricity. There were 12 million cubic meters of forest destroyed. The main newspaper in Sweden had big black block letters saying hundreds of trains cancelled. Further down, in much smaller, it said 5 people died in the storm. So that's how important it was. Going from train, I went to Vattenfall, which is what then was one of the leading European energy companies or utilities. It was very controversial, having a lot of nuclear, and was heavy in lignite and coal fire, making it the biggest emitter of CO2 in all of Europe. Today I'm at Skanska as the global head of media relations. I don't know how many of you actually know us, but we're one of the world's leading construction companies. We're present in 17 different countries. In Europe and Latin America and USA. Actually one of the biggest in USA as well. So my experience tells me that it's very important to stay close to the business when you work with media relations. It's actually, we're at the business that communication makes sense. So if you start there, it makes sense internally and it makes sense externally. So, and that's also a way of describing internally that communication is not a cost, it's an investment. You hear that a lot, that communication is a cost and we can't afford it and so forth, but we need to look at it as an investment. And we have to add business value, because if we don't, we should probably not do what we are doing. So, so far, I believe everyone agrees with me. The last point is a bit more difficult, but that's actually the only way to get any approval from your management. If you can't prove that you actually make business with value, they won't listen to you. And the safest way of doing that, being in an engineering-driven or a technical business, is by numbers. So, but I do want to underline that I don't mean add value with that, and we'll get back to that. So, to start off, there are a few questions you have to answer, put to yourself. Number one is, of course, what is the business? Where are we making money? What are we actually doing? And who is our target groups? And how do I measure my business value? So I will run through those quickly. If we look at Skanska, what is the business for Skanska? Well, it's a lot of different things, actually. We do everything from leasing office buildings, developing residentials, constructing mega projects. We do a lot of prestige buildings like Oculus at World Trade Center in New York. We built the Gherkin, and last week we got a $4 billion order for LaGuardia Airport in New York. So, but we also do refurbish schools in the north of Sweden or on the countryside of Poland. So, and then we do our own development. So we develop residentials and we sell them to private customers or clients. Or we develop office buildings, we lease them to clients, and we then sell to investors. So these are all very different kinds of businesses, and they're going on in 17 countries. In some of the countries, we do all this. In some, we only do a few of these things, or in others, we are just maybe a civil contractor. So that makes a big difference in how media relations and communications actually add business value. So if we look at one of these examples, California, where Skanska is right now growing very fast, the ambition is to be #1 on the west coast of USA. Today we're a small, relatively unknown player in the market. The US market is very fragmentized, so even if we're big in US, we can be small locally. And what we have in California is mostly a civil building operation. And these contracts are announced by local governments, and the contractors then submit bid, and the profit is made in smart engineering and performance of the projects. So it's not a beauty contest. And how can communications and media relations then add value? Well, the main challenge for us is the huge demand for talent. We won several huge projects of building light rail and tunnels and bridges. And we need a lot of people. We need a lot of people, and we're growing fast. So that's where we should focus our communications investments, so to say, or efforts. While the picture is, of course, a completely different one if you're trying to sell residential homes in Prague. So the next challenge with going is, of course, the different markets and the different media landscapes. When I was new at Vattenfall, I had a media analysis over Germany. Germany was our biggest market at that time. So I went down to my new colleagues in Germany with this analysis and my own conclusions and ideas, and showed it to them, and they were all just shaking their heads saying, "What is this? No, we've never seen this before. We don't recognize this at all." And it turned out that the analysis done in Stockholm had let out a number of regional or local papers and focused on the big national newspapers and some of the bigger regional papers. This was necessary because Germany has about 350 local newspapers, so it would have been too expensive to include them all. The thing with Germany is it's a federation, and there is a local election going on almost all the time. And being an energy company, you rely on the regulation of the state you're operating in. So these local papers were actually very, very important. The national papers, not so much. Of course important, but didn't have the same direct impact to the business and the operations as the local ones. We have several other, I have several other examples of how the media landscape can differ from country to country. In Czech, it's very heavy on web-based news servers, as they call it. Going to Argentina, it's a very divided media landscape where it's actually two media houses, one pro and one against the government, and it's a very difficult situation to work with media relations and not position yourself politically. Last example is that I actually do get a media analysis from the different markets, and they don't always make sense to me. We have one market where we're not very big, but they're doing a really good job of making a mark, but Sweden, we've been in Sweden for 127 years. We're the third largest company on the stock exchange. I believe everyone knows who we are. We're always written about. We win mega projects in countries like USA. Still, this market had an ad value that was just through the roof. It was like 3 times of what was once estimated for Sweden. So it's very hard for me to make any sense of this at all. I will get back to what you do in times like that. So yeah, the different challenges we touched upon. We have different operations and business targets. Coming back to adding business value and having numbers to support it. How do you do that in a way that makes sense? We have different target groups, different media landscapes where numbers can, what can be true for one market is not necessarily true for the other. And I throw in the last one. It doesn't really fit this presentation, but I thought, having the opportunity with so many experts in the room, we have a rapidly changing media landscape, and we know that New York Times lost about 50% of the visitors to the start page. Still, NYT.com didn't, the number of visitors were constant. So people are finding new ways to their stories. And we know that almost a fourth of all people between 18 and 24 get their news stories through social media. So is it possible to track and follow how people find their stories? Not only that they find them. That would be, I think, immensely interesting to really understand the dynamics of a media landscape. So that one didn't really fit, but I couldn't help it. So what any KPI or any numbers of how to follow up how the work on media relations is done has to be relevant for the local market, but also for the business. And at the same time make some kind of sense on a global level. So these are, we don't have the answer to any of these. I don't have the answer to the questions, but these are, I think, very important metrics. And we need to go from big data to relevant data and put the right questions to the data. So making sure that it actually shows what needs to be shown to put it in the right context. So going forward, of course, we need to continue to discuss how to best evaluate business value for the specific business in the specific local surrounding. And also, if there's a possibility to measure and evaluate creativity, because that's what I try to do. When I get these reports from countries that doesn't really make sense to me, I still need to know if the job done in media relations is good or not. So how do I do it? Well, I try to focus on activities. How did they treat this story? Did they just send out a press release, or did they send out 4 different press releases with different angles directed to students, financial press, local newspapers? Did they sell the story exclusively to one reporter and then had a press release to sum up the rest? Do they work with opinion polls? Do they work with outside supporters? How do they treat and work with the content? That gives me actually a better indicator of if the work done in media relations is good or not than sheets with ad value or whatever it could be. So with that, I see I'm actually ahead of schedule. I guess Barry don't mind.
Gives more time for questions.
Oh,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Let me start on behalf of the group. So you're a global company. You're in 17 countries. Congratulations on the LaGuardia win. Huge project. So how are you analyzing, measuring the results of what your team is doing, say with big projects like that, and how are you sharing it with your senior management?
Yes, we don't have a global way of doing it. It's done. We're also very, very decentralized. I know many companies say that, but we really are. So, but if we look at Sweden, which is the closest to me, of course, we do have a media analysis, which we're helped by Retriever, and that is presented to the top management every quarter, and well, it's very easy for me to follow because the colleagues are sitting right next to me, so I know what's being done, and it's easy to have a grip. But if I look at specific countries, it differs very much, because in some of the countries it wouldn't be worthwhile doing an analysis, because we're a small, maybe very niche contractor in a, say, heavy civil engineering industry, building pipelines far away. It's not a business that really needs to be profiled in media. Okay. And in others, US, for example, it's more so. We have to work more with building the brand and profiling ourselves as an attractive employer, if not else. And they also work with analysis. I think we have some more way to go, but using data to find what to focus on, we also have a brand survey done every year, okay, where we can track what our clients are actually looking for. Right. Safety, green, ethics.
Okay. Let me come out to the group. We have a question on the second row. Thank you.
Hi, it's Kimberly Mackey from Bright House Networks. And this is kind of a statement, but also a question. So I had been in Skanska offices for a meeting in the Empire State Building. And even the people that were in the meeting, everything shut down. I think it was like 2 o'clock or something, and everybody had to stop and stretch, yeah, which I thought was a very interesting, they said that it was actually something that is done throughout the entire globe, and that it puts safety at the #1 core principle of the company. Could you talk about that, and have you used that in any of your media relations? I thought it was pretty incredible, because everybody, like literally, here we're in this meeting, and there goes the Nicole Ditta, yep. And she went running out, and she's like, you can all join us, and you use it as a time to talk too. Is that right?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I could talk about that for a long time, but yes, safety is very, very core, and it is because we're in a dangerous business. People actually die at work, and that's severe. That should not happen. So we work very focused on safety. We also had a safety week where about 300,000 people, we're 58,000, but all our subcontractors and partners and everyone, for 1 week is devoted to discuss and train and develop the safety of our work sites. But that goes for the offices as well. The topics then might be how to behave in the garage or something, but still, safety is always #1. Just a short anecdote of how ingrained it is in the soul of people. When I was new, I met one of the CEOs of one of our major business units, and we were to drink coffee, so I held my cup to him, and he said, no, put it down, safety first. So it went through, from the small things to the big things, yeah. And we do stretch and flex. I would, yeah. It's done at all work sites and all over. And when we had the safety week last week, we did a lot of media about that. We managed to gather 200 people in the center of Stockholm in their bright yellow work clothes doing stretch and flex.
We have time for one more question, if there is one. Otherwise, I would like to thank you for being with us today and sharing some of your work. Thank you.
Thank you.